Pete, are we ready? Okay. Pete, we got a little bit loud feedback on the microphones. Okay.
All right. Meeting back to full session. Welcome back, everybody. The next portion of our agenda tonight, before I start, I'll acknowledge that we have a large group in here tonight, but just as a reminder, there's no public. It's a public meeting, but it's not. Appreciate you being here. Yes, you don't normally have. Okay, so the first item on the new business tonight is to set a meeting date for.
Yes, obviously, you know, we've been planning to have a retreat. We have a facilitator. The facilitators actually could be up to 3 dates. I'm hoping 2 dates. So the first date or 2 would be the facilitator would come and have interviews with each individual board member, much like Dr. Bauk did about 4 years ago. That could be done in a couple of different ways. We could do it on one date if everybody lands on one date, and if there's some flexibility during the day, we could do it during one day, maybe a morning session, maybe an afternoon session, and an evening session, depending on people's schedules. Or we could split it up into 2 dates and just kind of do late afternoon and in the evening, 4 on one date, 3 on the other. That's a little bit more expensive because of mileage. The facilitator is coming from Owatonna. And then the other date that we need to find, and I would hope it would be a goal in September, if possible, for those, and maybe even a goal in September to have the retreat as well. She can make pretty much most dates work, depending, but if we came up with maybe a date, if we can, some of you go in the morning, you know, she can't do 7 between 6 o'clock and they'll be going way too late. So we'd have to, you know, look at your schedule to see if you could afford to come in a little bit earlier, if somebody can come in the morning, and then some maybe over the noon hour or whatever the case may be. I know that she's got a block of the first basically week and a half of October that she's not available. The week of September 6th is no good. How about Wednesday the 8th? No. Sure. No, we'll pick another date for because she's got to analyze all the feedback that she did. And then she'll meet with me and that'll help her. We have one date. Yep, I'll help facilitate the communication with you. Then probably I would assume to give her a couple of weeks to turn things around about Wednesday, the 29th of September for the actual retreat date. Oh, and yep, got it. About Thursday, the 30th. Okay. Does it Tuesday, the 28th? Okay. And our school board meeting's on Monday, the 27th. I'll try to see if she can turn things around for that. So the week of the 20th, maybe 20th?
No.
Monday, though.
How about Wednesday, the 22nd? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, Rachel. We could do it the 23rd, right after I meet with the board chair and the vice chair about the agenda. 21st? It's usually a 2-hour, 5 to 7, 6 to 8. Six to 8 on the 21st. Will Thursday be an okay backup for everyone? Okay. 21st is the first choice. So that first, the original date was the 21st, correct?
Yes.
Tuesday, the 21st.
Perfect, yeah, the 23rd will work.
And the
5 out of 7.
You're not just miss one or two, I think that's the way it works.
Okay, I'll check in and I'll let you know.
Sure.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much.
Okay, next item, discussion about the school board.
So that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the biggest school board ever had in my last 10 years. For what? And so I talked to a couple of you about what do we do with all of that feedback that we got? And I think a lot of people want to categorize that as critical race theory. And I think we made a pretty firm statement on critical race theory. We wanted to have more we've never even discussed it. It's not happening.
That's correct.
But there's a lot of other stuff in here that frankly, I would categorize as a little, and we got multiple examples of different stories at different meeting levels that I really feel like we need to look at as a board. Some of the stuff that's going on in classrooms, some of the intimidation. I actually pretty good on some of the comments that were made, and just as a board, I feel like we kind of need to unpack that and either prove that it isn't happening, or if it is happening, that makes some adjustments on our expectations. Yeah.
I think just overall, it sounds like we have a need for some coaching, or some continuing education for our staff. And everybody, it was a hard year, I get that, but I think just beyond all of that, it sounds like we have some opportunities. Always things that are controversial, but how will we deal with the classrooms and what's appropriate? That's what I take away from it. Not like No, honestly, I think there is some, I think it's a little far away to like go and say, okay, what happened with it, but I don't really want to do it. But I would love for us to see, what are we gonna do with it? That's how I kind of. But I think there's some staff development opportunities or there's a lot of, at least places in on behalf of teachers and staff. That we should figure out, but how do you that effective that which I'm saying is like the feedback is how do you ensure we're capturing that feedback accordingly? We don't feel like they're teaching very good.
I think we need to take a little history out of some of these topics, from parents, right? If teachers feel like they have a green light to flow into a political thing, one way or the other, left side or right side, I think it's on us to make sure that this is where the school district either can, or you have to, one way or the other. I think we let our parent group know that this is what we're allowing, or this is where we're drawing the line on those sorts of things. One of the comments was that a second grader was being intimidated by a teacher where their parents stand on certain things. That should not happen. And if or we need to know if that's happening. I need to feel real good about knowing if that is happening or if it isn't. If it is happening, I think training is probably the right way to do it. Something I don't understand just as a community member is why certain topics fall on the responsibility of, why is race and comments or topics around it, why is that on our shoulders in the classroom? Why is how you feel politically one way or the other on the shoulders of us? Why are the rainbow signs? Why is that on the shoulders of the school district to allow or not allow? And to be completely transparent, I think there's an all or nothing conversation here, and I really think we should. I think if we're going to allow the rainbow signs in that school, why are we then also allowing thin blue lines in the school or whatever it is? And I think any of us want to do that. I really don't think any of us really want to set up a playing field where people are allowed to publicly debate really divisive things, especially when we're on the eve of asking the community for money that honestly we really need this budget to pass this fall. So divisive things in school for the census kids. So I want to learn more about that. So.
I think for me, having a district that's inclusive and accept this consistent is about hearing, and everybody has a right to their opinions. Nobody should be felt otherwise, all sides. And it's not about just one marginalized group of people. It's the whole collective. But it all comes down in my mind on mostly where it's appropriate to show support across all categories. That's not in the classroom in my mind. That's in neutral spaces where kids have a choice then to go into those neutral spaces to have some of those conversations and to feel supported in the way that allows them to feel safe and supported, right? To me, the classroom should always be teach how to think, not what to think. Have some good age appropriate on tougher topics. I think that we also, I agree with you, it feels like the school carries that burden. I think we have a role in there in a certain way, in the right way, but we also have to do community work. We have to do work as a community to have some of those conversations. And I really appreciated some of the letters that we heard and some things that. How do you talk as a team? Have a voice and I don't know, to me, I don't want to say, pulling out all of that, that would make us look, very different to every other public school in the state of Minnesota. We have to figure out how to be inclusive and how to make sure everybody's voices are heard. And I'm sure we can really talk about it. Talk about it. And that's what we should do. So we can do that. And we do education in this state. We will education for the community. We can have a great discussion without having that case know that my teacher is on the right side of it. My teacher is on the right side. We can do some of the appropriate that's what's happening. That's not really. That's what my concern is. We have to address it. Not having to do it for someone else. All of you. What's happening. In the classroom. That's where I concern. I know that. Hear from our administration and our teachers. There's always two sides. Some people want or to directly. Obviously, let's say time. Let's say every parent stood up and talked about things. Never. And as a board, we should have policy with ultimately. That's how we do that. That's how we do that. We say that none of what we said. Just look at it. What is possible? I don't give any education. I'm worried a little bit about policy, you know, creating a policy, but I think
quite honestly, was really incredibly difficult to write and as opposed to what is the, what is the training? How do you approach this in a way that, isn't painful, but is like, hey, you can't have the spirit what we heard, we just can't have it. If that policy to have something clear to still allow education to happen. But yeah, I mean, we clearly have an opportunity to go back and our teachers and bring the feedback to them so that.
Want to support our teachers. And I also want to know, just the administration perspective. Obviously, but there's a policy to be. About any concerns or if they're not getting resolution with the teachers, there's a chain that goes through administration to Matt to us, right? And how do we make sure that we are solid on that and that the performance reviews of the teachers are addressing any of the feedback that is related to it. I think that in my mind is where I want to create some sort of board policy and we look to Matt and say, what does that process look like? So that we have comfort that there is sort of a review cycle from the teachers that what exists in that, so that we understand that there is a process. And again, empowering the parents to talk to the teachers. And if they're not getting resolution from the teachers, there is a process of further escalation.
Yeah, right. And if that's broken, we need to fix that.
Right.
And know that, yeah. But no, if that's happening, education is happening, back to teachers, back to administrators, right, we don't, right, again, we can't jump the policy.
Nobody's saying that. What people are saying is nobody's guilty obligated, right? Innocent until proven guilty. You can investigate and see what's going on. And if any of these things are going on, then you have to go and take them in that sequence, right? And I mean, to start, I would like to see a list of the books that kids are required to read for class and see where those books lay relative to social. I think that might tell us.
Again, there isn't sound.
No.
Hey, Pete? I'm not hearing sound.
Right, so we're not leaving to our decision on if this is actually happening or not. But I think that when this many people come to our meeting and voice that consistent of that you need to look at. If it's happening, and we've been put on notice, and we've done nothing. It'd be dangerous.
Well, you're on curriculum, right? Yep. So when I was at curriculum, I remember Jim Ventura doing arts. The challenge there are a lot of elective curriculum, like elective classes that have certain, kind of books. And those are very clearly documented in the, so that not even just the syllabus, and the kids go to register for that class. And the parents are supposed to be involved in that process. So there is some of that. And I love that part. I mean, that was,
I heard some kind of sound and then you guys told me
that's
there's
that
no
much.
sound. Did you saw that?
Yeah,
And I don't
Freedom
know.
to be here,
Maybe
does a
something
good
blew
job
up.
offering up, good selection of books that kind of have a little bit of an array. Books of what they study for that policy.
We are on TV live within there.
I know that
So
that's
just-
really addressed. I don't know a lot about. But they just have I think it's something I think about it. I think about it. A little bit more, there's standards, there's what we're going to do. Those are good ideas.
And I think that's where, right, in my mind, that's the structure that we have in place that should be the kind of discussion. Right, have to be parent involved, and parents are welcome to attend that. I think that's where this conversation, right, from government structure starts, is at the curriculum.
I'm so surprised.
And so the more the all of that, some people, or we're obviously not in a public setting. But what are we doing? Is about the issues and the parents are trying. How do we move forward with the board to how can it be represented? What they're doing to us.
I think if I could beg the pardon of the board, is give me an opportunity to go back to have a conversation with our leadership team to review what has complaints gone up the chain to, and we can make that to be a start, and I can come back and report to you, or I can share that information with you at that time. It's going to take a little bit of time to delve into it, but I think that would be a good start, is to have that conversation. Little hampered. I got 2 new principals in the buildings, so it potentially will take a little bit of time, but it also is an opportunity to review our process and see how that process is done. We want to make sure that I've been doing this a long time. I was a principal for over 15 years, and usually when I get a call from a parent and they have a complaint of something that was done in the classroom, regardless of what it was, I've encouraged the parent, when the student came home and told the parent that this happened in the classroom, I've always encouraged the parent, have you talked to the teacher yet? It's okay. They expect parents to give them a call, to have questions about what goes on. And I can tell you a huge percentage of the time in my career, once the teacher explained the context of what was happening in the classroom, it was a very different outcome. But there does happen a situation, we're all human beings. I mean, the teaching business is a human process where somebody doesn't, and that's where the principal gets involved. And so if the parent does not believe that there's resolution, that's where the principal does get involved. And I was involved as a principal here in the high school on multiple occasions, working with parents and the teacher to come to a resolution, to find out, to facilitate a formal investigation. And if it doesn't, it does come to the superintendent. And if it doesn't get resolved there, it comes to the school board. And that's the process we've used. I think it's worked relatively well for us in this district. I've worked in 3 other school districts and we've used the same process. And it seems to have worked well. How that's based on my perception, it might be different from a parent's perspective. I am a parent. I had kids go through this school system. So I can speak to that. But I think that would be our first step, is that let me get back to my administrative team, try to encapsulate the conversation that the board is having here this evening, and then I can come back and report.
That's a big piece of it. The other piece, we have 2 things going on, right? When there's bad behavior, what's Lisa said, chain of command. Chain of command fits really well, right? You gotta have people talk in. Can't just escalate right to the top. The other thing is, what are our expectations of teachers? Content in their curriculum and their comments in the classroom regarding political, social, governance, things like that. Comment on that.
I don't
We
think
set expectations for our teachers in that regard.
we set systemically expectations with regards to standards and curriculum. What becomes difficult is, for example, in the high school, we've got a class called current events. There's a lot of things that are going to be covered in that. The formal social studies teachers I talked to in events. And so there's a lot of topics that get covered there. Usually the expectation from the district is that the teacher facilitates a safe and engaging conversation. And there's plenty of times as a formal social studies teacher, whether it be in history, governments, current events, sociology, all of those social sciences, there becomes an opportunity for the teacher. The expectation is to facilitate a safe dialogue and a learning environment for all the students in the classroom. It's not the opportunity for the teacher to convey one political view over another political view. Usually the teacher is then facilitating. Now, invariably, political views come out in those types of classes at the age appropriate level. But it's again, the teacher's responsibility to help facilitate that in a safe and learning environment. That's, you know, and there isn't any, it's very difficult for me to quantify, you can do this, you can't do this, to what degree can you do it? And maybe that's just more conversation that we have to have. But you know, obviously there's going to be conversations at a second grade level that's very, very different than a senior social studies class. And I do believe our educators know that very well. But I can't speak to all 175 teachers on everything that happens every day in the classroom. On how that,
what our expectations of them are on social governance, political discussions, etc.
I can't speak to it on behalf of the entire district on expectations. We just want to make sure, as I said before, our expectation is that the teacher facilitates the learning, doesn't have any biased approach to one viewpoint or another. That would be my.
Annual basis before the student talk, or you just kind of think it's a goal or
I think that we discussed that in a curriculum review process. That's the what you teach. It's not necessarily the how you teach. I've left that up to the discretion of our professionals to use their judgments. I mean, all teachers through their teacher training go through morals and all of the pieces about how they facilitate their role as a teacher in the teacher prep programs. And our professional development does speak to that. They have to review in their licensure in major categories of certain things to keep their licensure. But I think as a district, I haven't had a expectation conversation because it's just varied, right? I mean, I think there's different expectations for a senior social studies teacher than there would be of a first grade teacher. And there's difference in that. So that's the best answer for you I can give you. Yeah, but it's an interesting thing because I remember when I was a social studies teacher, I invariably, every election year, Mr. Shane, how'd you vote? How'd you vote? And I'd say, well, sometimes I would say, this is how I voted. But again, I explain that within the democratic process. Every eligible person has the right to vote the way they want to vote. I just happen to vote this way. Or I have in certain occasions, depending on the topic, decided to say, as my right, I am a citizen of the United States. I reserve the right not to share how I voted. So it can be both ways. It depends on the circumstance. If I think it was beneficial for the lesson plan of the day, for that particular current event or whatever it was, we were covering election, but it was done with a complete level of neutrality in my experience when I was a teacher. And I think I think our educators are facilitating that in the same way. And if not, there ought to be a parent that raises a concern. You talk to that teacher about that to get clarification. And if not, they ought to be talking to the principal and they ought to be talking to me.
I like the idea of going mass meetings. We've done climate surveys. We haven't really tackled this element of it, so I think it's staff.
fund is one way or another, I'm gonna try to come up. So maybe it's something. Working up with the.
And I think the first step is to have a group think with my executive team.
Next item is public comment. Forward on. I have thoughts. So. contact. I don't know. Finding that you put in place to keep our meeting. Yeah. I did that on the paper. So that was hard. So on the response to it, we don't think we really want to do it. I don't necessarily want to have to always public comment. Something that to be that cadence, but I also want people to know that they're welcome to come. They're welcome to talk, not, stop pointing and not, do that to me. I had the opportunity to go to Buffalo or the last time. We are all 2 minutes. I don't know, but I felt uncomfortable. It did feel very smooth. And so I'm not, like, my mind, I'm not ready to go. I would say that I don't feel like talking. So I think that there are some ways that we can certainly develop our open comment. Absolutely. I would like to maybe remind that addressing the board is one of them here. Some cheers and clapping and chanting and things like that. I would like to try to keep it. Here. But, I believe, I don't want to sign this either. I do think that if we even need a couple of work. I generally something. So we have a clear on.
I was just gonna say, or just Open mic for class, whatever you want. I just think it's fun.
I think that's probably something that. You know, it actually uncomfortable to just sit there and not comment, but. Yeah, I think it's fun. And I think that's the whole. Some cases when I think we call it right here. How would you say the feeling? I might, the board might respond to like this. Dialogue, because that's where it's gone. In the opposite direction, there's past when you or a conversation back and forth, that's even more uncomfortable to. You're still limited by. There's a part of me that 5 minutes is a long, but there's a lot I would never go to. I just wonder how productive we are after 2 hours. But I would never want to say, so many people to talk. That doesn't feel right on the practice. There's a balance that we strike so that it's not. More than 2 hours.
Educationally, if you go past 2 hours, it's not too good. Classes, 3-hour classes in college didn't work for me very well. I did share with the board a draft. On Monday, the cabinets convened for their annual retreat, a big portion, and then we invited several other people that came in, our COVID coordinator, a couple of teachers that were there on other issues, but were able to provide feedback. And we kind of put together, we did a little bit of, I've had multiple conversations with my colleagues and superintendents in the area, east, north, south, west, all over. We're all coordinating quite a bit. We're all getting feedback from each other. And so we put together, some school districts are very vague with their protocol. Some districts are a little bit more detailed, and we decided to kind of put a draft in with the intent to be able to give as much information and guidance we can to our parents so they know what the protocols would be. If you are familiar, the Department of Health interpreted the guidance from the CDC, and basically we come to the conclusion that there are 2 mandates that are still required coming into the 21-22 school year. And that is that all riders on public transportation, that includes school buses, are required to wear a mask. The other requirement is that school districts are required to report positive COVID cases to the Department of Health. And this is the same in any other communicable disease that's been going on in school districts for years and years and years. The school districts are required to report certain levels of influenza, certain levels to all sorts of other strep, certain things like that, depending. But those are the only 2 requirements we have. The others are recommendations. And so what we drafted the plan around is pretty close to that. Whether it be, we still have to flesh out a little bit on quarantines, but it's recommended, it's best practice, according to the CDC, according to the Department of Health, that you wear a mask when you come to school, whether you're vaccinated or not. That's the recommendation, but it is not a requirement. And that's currently the language that we have in the plan. It is recommended best practices if you're considered to be a close contact. in any setting in the educational arena, parent, it's recommended that you should quarantine your unvaccinated child for a period of 7 days, depending on outcome of the test. I think that over the years, when a health official, a nurse, a school nurse in each of our buildings have made a recommendation to parents, our parents take that seriously and they'll make that decision. It is a recommendation, it is not a requirement. So that's the language that we're choosing to use. It's pretty closely to what the Department of Health is actually using their language. And I shared the links to the specifics. I shared the links to an executive summary of the Department of Health's recommendations. And I could tell you that a number of the districts, especially in this area, in this region, in Wright County, are doing the same. Some are articulating them more vaguely, some articulating them, and you can go into Waconia, Prior Lake, Mound West Tonka, and they're a little bit different in each area. And I just think that's an opportunity for the district to make sure they know their community, they're getting feedback from their community, and that plan should help drive that piece. So what I would just, I think at this particular time is, I shared this, I know I just shared this with you, things are running fast. We're trying to get this put together, but we're trying to be very meaningful. It's a balance. It's a balance of the health and safety of our students and our staff, but also a balance with making sure that we continue to provide educational excellence. And so it's a balanced approach that we're trying to do, and we're trying to be as consistent as we can. And I would just entertain any feedback that you might have. I know I got some responses via email when I shared it all out with you. And I haven't received a lot of feedback. And again, this is just new. I mean, I just started with my leadership team this week. Usually, comparatively to last year, there's a lot less anxiety. And I think that's because the majority of teachers that chose to got vaccinated. So that put a different lens. We came into last year with no vaccination whatsoever. So that I believe is probably a cause for our staff to be a little bit more. But I would say that this is purely conjecture, because I've had some conversations with some teachers, but I think that there's probably a varying degree amongst 175 individuals on how they feel about safety coming back to school. Just like there's varying degrees within a community about what they think that should be there. So I would think that our employee group would represent the same. Correct.
Okay. I guess I'm reflecting on the so okay. So this is not our school district. It's Southwest Metro's online program. So families opt into this program, then for that particular period, they're not eligible to the pantry stores.
No, actually, so basically about a month ago, we knew, and we were getting some feedback, obviously, as we were starting to think about this coming year, whether it's masks or no masks, recommendations, requirements, mandates, we start thinking about this. I knew that we had a population of students that are autoimmune deficient, that have health issues, that regardless of what mitigations potentially, these are the families that deliberately chose distance learning last year, some of them, because they just didn't want their child to be in the school with this COVID situation going on. We don't have distance learning anymore like we had last year. We don't have hybrid learning. We don't have the learning models anymore. We are all in person, but we knew that there was going to be a percentage of some families that would say, I still am not, medically, it doesn't seem to make sense. So what we're doing is we're working with Southwest Metro, which is an intermediate school district, has about 11 districts that are members. We're not. But what it does, though, it allows Delano to provide an online learning option, K through 12, and they remain our student. So the idea for providing this is for a medically fragile student. They shouldn't be involved in team sports. That logic just doesn't come clear with me.
Is there just not cost?
There is.
Just know that I'm saying. That obviously we're budget cuts.
Right.
We're in a different scenario. We could fund our own online program.
There's no way a school district this size would have the staffing to be able to do that. So what this is though, is it's basically designed to be a cost neutral basis. So we keep the students, the average daily membership dollars stay with us and the student, and then the Southwest Cooperative, it's not a cooperative, it's an intermediate school district, would bill us basically the amount. Local dollars don't go there. Local dollars stay. It would just be, it's trying to cover, the intermediate school district is trying to do this on a cost neutral basis.
When we do have. They're not going to be done with some collection. They're going
No.
to get homework or they run out of food.
Yeah, so that's a conversation that we're going to have with teachers. So, for example, we learned a lot last year. So we're going to leave it up to teachers to make the decision. So like, in the old days, you did the 2-week vacation and you're going to be gone out of school for a week combined with spring break or whatever. Or you, heaven forbid, you had to have surgery and you couldn't be back in school. In the old days, the teachers would put together a learning packet and, parent would pick that up and they would do it when they could. And once they returned, they would be able to have time to get things completed and get caught up. But we've learned now that teachers might opt to say, hey, look, this is pretty easy. It's all linked. You could just go on Google Classroom and check it out. You have your device. We're all a one-to-one device initiative. You can have that at home and you could potentially link on and do some online activity that way. So we just got to flesh that out with our educators, because I think some educators, and I know we've had high school teachers that have recorded, this is even pre-COVID, have recorded their lectures in chemistry and classes like that. So when the kid is gone, they can just go ahead and access that recording at any time. So we got to give the teachers a little bit of flexibility to say, hey, I can meet this, Johnny is quarantined for 7 to 10 days, depending on how it works. Hey, Johnny, when you're home, you got your device, click on this in my Google Classroom. Those are some activities. You got any questions, shoot me an email. Heck, they could even jump on a Google Meet and have a quick conversation for 2 minutes to clarify some things, give some directions, and away they go.
Whatever attention is, that would not allow this to be running. There was a number of times I think kids quarantined to, you could sit for a lot of work on our teachers, and I just want to make sure that we're not running that.
What we're going to try to do is, again, it's a recommendation, but we're going to, so basically, and it's a good opportunity to clarify. We're still going to take some measures where we are able to reasonably close contact trace. Okay, so that's within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more in a 24-hour period. That's the definition. So what we're going to try to be as smart as we can, because that means the impact. And last year, the lovely time of sending all classrooms home, we're not intending to do that. So we're intending to do a close contact to make the recommendation. We would send the rest of the class, if there was a positive case in the classroom in so-and-so's 3rd grade classroom, we would send notification to the entire classroom, kind of like we've got, you get notes from nurses that there happens to be a case of lice in there, or happens to be a case of strep. So, we notify all the parents. So we're going to follow that same procedure just to let parents know, but then give the parents the option and the choice to do that. The quarantine, so if you're not a close contact, you don't get the quarantine. It's my long-winded answer to that.
Do I have the opportunity to say, I'm not going to send it today. I can do that as a parent, right?
the post office. I was quite sure that this is I want to check it, but I'm not going to decide.
It's steep again and just a recommendation. So, you know, like I said, we're in draft right now. Our hope is we want to get this plan approved by the board and to our public as soon as possible. But that scenario would be reflected within the protocol.
I'd like to draft things together. You've been pretty consistent, you've been very consistent for 2 years that you want to put these kids in a learning environment that gives them the best chance of performing at a high level. You've been saying that since we launched into this COVID thing. We've been saying it long before. You've been very consistent that it's all about kids learning. I think that the plan that you put together gives them the best opportunity to get us as close to normal as we can, because we kind of own this education system to what it is today over the last 100 years. And I just really think that that's all that it can ask of the school district. Give these kids the best shot they can. Not being more restrictive than you need to. You're pulling it all the way back to whatever anybody is allowing the school district to do. The only way that's going to change the way it looks to me is if our people wait to the east to get involved. They start telling us at a deeper level. Until then, it looks to me like we're going to keep this in a scenario where it's going to be as normal and pretty darn close to normal as it always has.
What is the? Great. What would it take for us? State for the government, federal concept,
So this,
even pre-COVID, remember it was a bad flu outbreak, people were shut down. So I'm just trying to understand that. How do we make sure students who for their families, that they're just as supported and welcome than those who opt not?
that's a conversation we're having with the executive team. So when they meet with their staff, we want to make sure that whether you mask or you don't mask, you're all treated equally. You're all treated with respect. And there's probably going to be occasions where, you know, kids are kids and they're going to say something to somebody else about if they're wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. But our educators in the classroom on the front lines and our staff need to make sure that we create that environment that's safe for everybody. So to answer your first part of your question, to my understanding, and again, I'm not the Department of Health, but it would be treated as there's a threshold of 5% within a school of a positivity rate, or that there is a cluster spread within the school. So if kids are spreading it to kids or other adults, and it's happening in the schools, now we have to take other measures. There are times when schools are, by the authority of the law, where the Department of Health shuts it down for 2 weeks. This is pre-COVID time, when that 5% seems to be the threshold that the Department of Health has been using. And I think too, what they'll do is if there's evidence of spread in a cluster format, so in part of the plan, it talks a little bit about if there's 3 or more related COVID cases in a class, that might require us to revisit protocol. Because now we know that something's spreading within a classroom, within a school. And it'll be done in a surgical approach by school, but we want to make sure, what we want to do is we don't want to get there. So anything that's common sense that we can do, to Corey's point, to balance, and again, this comes from the state, in-person learning is the #1 way to educate children. Some do, very small percentage thrive in other ways, but that's what we want to avoid. So it's a balanced approach. So to answer your question, Amy, it's like a threshold that they use. Yeah. I don't know because I've never done it. The only time I've ever experienced, I had a student in another school district, not this district, that tested positive for tuberculosis. The county public health system was in my building the next day. And they facilitate a process of figuring out what's close contact, and they've had these procedures in place for many, many, many years.
It might be lasting.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation, kind of interesting, with another educator about that they've heard that that's a possible strategy. That's something we could take a look at. I'm just not quite sure with class assignments right now and trying to get that. That's a big turnaround. That's a big managerial turnaround. I mean, right now, I'm pretty sure that the elementary and the intermediate have class assignments with teachers. Pretty darn sure they are. They just haven't publicized them yet. But to be able to, it'd have to be done at the site level and even at the classroom level to find out. And then are you then requiring, if, okay, let's say we've got 25 fourth graders that are going to be in so-and-so's classroom and they're going to wear the mask. Then do you mandate it? Or do you decide, well, I've done a couple of weeks and I don't feel like wearing the mask anymore. So there's a couple of layers to kind of go through there because you can't switch the classes. Once you're in, you gotta be at those lower levels, you're assigned to those teachers. So right.
I can see from that. This is what I feel, but.
Right. Yeah, and that's what's happened. This has created a lot of creative solutions. I think it might be a little hard to turn that around now. The other thought coming into play there is, so I'm not sure on all the specialists, can you stay in a cohort model? And then you go to lunch and you're not going to be wearing a mask. Nobody wears masks during lunch because you're eating. So I don't know, but I'll definitely bounce around with the team to keep the creative solutions up there.
Having to go back to the system. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. I recognize that when those in situations, the voices are very loud.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is heavy compared to everything else, but it is definitely something that is kind of resonated with me. For, my daughter, my youngest was 15 last year. necessarily, but it's a public room, the biggest structures for her. Double understanding and see that, you know, that's part of that event. I'm to just look at that event and understand what does that look like. Just my voice that it's so hard on these kids, you know, and just considering what that looks like. Well, there are various times, so you said in one season, 4 months, you know, and again, I know it's that it's not a board thing, but I think in here is part of it, so I just wanted to bring it up that it's part of it. You know, where last year we had some kids who I themselves because they didn't get out there fast enough to get in high school that, and so we don't want that for high school. It's not.
No, they're spaced. They're spaced. And it's particularly just that we want to make sure if we have to make a recommendation on a close contact, we have some structure to it. But I totally understand it. There's that whole anxiety of that's a social time during the school day. You get to sit with friends, you get to, you know, introduce, you know, find new friends and you're out in recess and I can take it back. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that kind of feedback. It's not petty. I think that's very important. But it's a balance, right? You want to be safe. You want to make sure that you don't have any cluster outbreaks. And if we can try to do it in a balanced way. But I think that's worthy for our team to kind of talk that through again, especially at that intermediate and elementary level. Yeah, we kind of did like at the intermediate, it was like table assignments. It wasn't necessarily you had to sit in the exact same seat, but you had to structure it so you were spaced a little bit further apart. So you could be at the table, same group of kids at the same table, so on and so forth. So. No, they went to the lunchroom. Yep.
No, but with the class.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a very good question. There's two things we can do. Excuse me, the board can do. You can, there's a little bit of we're getting some feedback that people want to know, what is it? What's the protocol? So they know what's expected of them. You have your August school board meeting is the 23rd of August. We could finish up if there's any, I think there's relatively, you know, I got the feedback and the gist from the board. We're due to meet on the 18th. The cabinet is due to meet on the 18th of August next, I believe it's Wednesday, to go through the final review of the draft based on feedback from board, based on feedback from all the stakeholders on the internal side. We're hearing feedback from our, when we send out our communications on a weekly basis and getting some feedback there. So the board could, if you have an appetite, to be a little bit quicker in response instead of waiting. I know it's just a few days, but you could convene a special school board meeting on Thursday the 19th. We will have finished our process and then we can publish on that Friday. Or if you want to wait until the 23rd for your regular August school board meeting, we would then publish Tuesday the 24th of August. We can do it that night. Yeah. Does that still impede with travel? The board, no offense to the board chair. We just need a quorum.
And say, I feel like it's not a lot of communication. For some reason, I don't necessarily feel like
Well, our last communique that came out actually today was that this plan is not any major deviation from what we've been communicating already. So this isn't going to be a surprise, I hope, to what in conjunction. This isn't a complete 180 from what we've already been communicating. So the protocol is that they're going to have to schedule a meeting with their building principal. So that you kind of go, it's all on a case by case basis.
Parents is what's, so,
Wasn't a policy, I think, last year we approved. This will be a resolution that is essentially
It was,
our school year.
yeah, I don't even think it needs to be in the sense of a resolution. The guidance that I received from the district attorney, MSBA came out with, you know, that sample type resolution. I forwarded that on to Mick and I says, hey, how are you working with districts on that? And his response was, he is working with districts on that. He says, my advice is for each district to adopt a policy or protocol, and that's what I'm going to call this, is a protocol, because school officials will generally have immunity if they follow a board policy or protocol. So it's a simple just adoption of the protocol of the safe learning plan. These are our protocols that we're going to follow.
I really think we're talking about it.
Could be.
We've all read it. Approved.
I would assume so at the end of that. I mean, there'll be opportunities. You'll have the plan. You can send me a note or any other feedback. I could research out if you could potentially Zoom, you know, something of the sort like that. We have to go back to our, it depends on where you are. You kind of got to post a public meeting and have access to your area. Right. And the board is met in a forum, but not full 7 before, and have made decisions and taken action. It's not uncommon. It wouldn't be in the form of a resolution.
The biggest question is if we are all 7 members.
I'm okay because it's official, it's legal, and I know the board members that aren't present, that they're going to support the recommendation of the district, my recommendation. You'd have to be in person. I was thinking out loud that I'd try to research out, but if you can have somebody join a meeting officially in official capacity in an electronic format, but it's very dated. You have to actually officially, you're in some hotel room,
It's just the person that's in the hotel room.
you gotta post the agenda. You want to make sure public can access where you are. So it's very dated statute that kind of guides us. I think board members have in the past, pre-COVID, pre-Zoom, pre-all this, they've said, I know I've given my intentions. The superintendent understands where I'm at. I'm comfortable with the quorum of 5 or whatever, how many. As long as we have a quorum, then we can go forward that way.
I think given our constitution, regardless of what we have.
Why is it a win-win? It's a win for some, it's a win for others. It's a give and take.
I think we have to agree.
Everyone's making
given have choice. This provides choice. And my thing is just instilling expectations across every person that steps in. Respectful. We don't practice. That's how we. Our people.
No, once we get this worked out, we have a staff protocol. And because theoretically, most of our educators would never need to meet the definition of a close contact. And you can work individually with a student, but you don't have to be there for a full 15 minutes. There are some staff members that are required to be in close contact in providing educational services to a student. So we're going to recommend that you either mask and or you're vaccinated. Because that's his protocol. And if the student can as well be in that close proximity. But again, it's steeped in the same truth. Still working on that with the second. What they,
Is not public. No staff members.
that's correct. You can ask. You don't have to answer. I'll pull out my wallet right now and show you my vaccination card. I have no problem telling people I'm vaccinated. No, you can't.
So that public. That's really what I like about this topic. People are afraid of the parents who should be sending them. They know that they can find it. So we have to do a little bit. Have to do something.
What's the date? We can do Wednesday evening. The cabinet meets at 1:30 in the afternoon. Wednesday evening, 5 o'clock. It's just on a show of hands. How many can make that date and time? This is Wednesday, the 18th, next Wednesday.
My husband is first partner for that day.
Do you want to do it later?
A little bit later, just so long as that football, I can come into the meeting.
At 6?
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Ooh. We can probably do it we'll do it in the district office. I just don't know the availability of the site. And then how many again can make? I just want to make sure we have a quorum. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 5, 6. Okay. When? I'll send an invite. District office.